Hey guys, Julian here, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make minimal tech house like Darius Syrossian. As usual, you can get the full project files, samples, MIDI, presets, all of that stuff from this video. It's available right at the top of the description, and if you're a patron on my Patreon, check there, because it's already available. And yeah, here we go. So we're at 124 BPM, pretty standard tempo for more like tech house style stuff. The first sound here is the stab, which sounds like this. So here's the pattern. You can see, yeah, if I play it with the kick, you'll hear like it's this super bouncy 8th note and 16th note sort of thing. The idea here is just to create like this nice, simple, just riff like this that's really just based on one note. Like you can see, there's not any extra notes in there. I'm not trying to do any music theory stuff with this, and part of that is really because, you know, since this is a stab, it's already playing a minor chord. So if I try to go like those two chords work together, but if you try to do like, you know, it doesn't really sound like an actual chord progression. So with this, you really just want to create like a nice long, you know, solid groove like this, and then it's really just more about the notes that are happening like on that one note and how that's all bouncing around. And you can see there's a lot of swing here as well, like all the 16th notes. I'll put on the 16th note grid so you can see like that one. It's not like a whole lot. It's this little subtle amount of it that's really gonna give it like some life. You know, it's not just like the most obvious type of like swing, but it's more. It just gives it a really nice bounce. And then for the sound with this one, so this is just a sample. That's how this works. Typically with this style, what I find is that it's a lot more about like laying out audio than it is about, you know, like sitting there and like knowing chord progressions and knowing like all this exact stuff. But it's really just about having like some really cool textured audio like this and putting it all together. So that's what this is. It's just this piano stab. And then I have it going through a bit of chorus as well as some reverb. So here's without these. And then with the chorus is subtle. And then the reverb. So you can hear these are just giving it a little bit of space. The chorus just is kind of spreading it out without being too much. I didn't want this one to be adding too much. And then the reverb here, we just got the size and the decay time down. So it's like this really fast little, and then it just kind of stops. It just makes it ring out a little bit more, but you can hear that really brings it to life. And it makes it sound bigger too, because now it's a bit more like, almost, I want to say like boomy, you know, it's giving it space in the mix. And yeah, then we just have a bit of drum bus, so this is really fattening the sound up and bringing out the chorus and the reverb. And this is the thing with these kind of stabs, like, it's not that hard to do. As you can see, it's just single note, you know, simple bouncy pattern, simple processing. The thing that really matters is just getting it to sound really big and fat in the track and like how it fits into your track. Which is not hard if you have something simple like this. It really just comes down to like, you know, not having too much stuff in the way and then just having something simple like this to really give it some fullness. And make it fat. You know, I think there's a big misconception that people think as you get better at producing, your effects chains need to be crazier. Like, you know, you need to have, you know, like what separates a not good producer from a really good producer would be the not good producer would use one reverb, but the really good producer would have 3 reverbs to do specific things and like, you know, 5 filters and phasers and all this stuff. But you really don't need all this little stuff if you just have good, proper sounds that are gonna sit nicely in the mix. You know, you just need a little bit of stuff like this and that's all, and then it's gonna work really well. And you're gonna have this really big stab that takes up enough of the mix to where you don't need a whole lot of stuff happening around it to keep it exciting. And then after that, I just have this auto pan, so this is just making it sort of bounce up. I have the phase on 0 and it's on quarter notes, so it's simulating if this was being sidechained to the kick. This just gives it actually a lot more groove, because if I didn't have this, you're just hearing one layer contributing to the groove essentially. It's just the notes that are being played. But now you're getting more depth because you're getting the notes that are being played Plus, this thing is like making it bounce up every time. So it's a lot actually happening, but again, it's just very simple. And this is another one of those things that's going to add depth to the sound. And then finally, I just have a high pass filter just to cut out the lows. With this one, you just want to make sure you don't cut it too high. Like if we put it here, it's tempting to do that because it is a very like focused sound now. The problem is that that's just going to sound a lot less big versus if you put it here. You're still cutting out the low end, so it's not going to get in the way of the bass, but now you have all these low mid-range frequencies that are going to add fatness to the sound. And yeah, that's it for the stab. Then we have the low end, which starts with the bass line here. So the bass line is basically being made with two things. We have a bass sound, which is made with a simple operator patch, and then I have this little bass percussion sound here. So you can see the bass is just going bow, 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 bow. It's really simple, and then you just get that call and response where the bass percussion then comes in. Boom, 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 boom. So this is the thing, really simple bass line, just one note the whole way through, but we're adding depth to it because you're hearing multiple things, and this bass percussion adds a lot because it has a lot of texture to it. You know, you're getting a bass note, but you're also getting like this cool sort of mid-rangey percussion over top of that. And when you hear that in the full mix, it's very good. It's like even though you can't really hear the bass line on its own, you can really just feel it. You can hear like a change happening when it gets to this note. And yeah, and then for the bass sound, like I said, it's a really simple operator patch. It's just two sine waves. So it's just basically one sine wave with a little bit of FM from the second one to fatten it up. And then I just have a low pass on there to make it deeper. A little bit of drum bus. I've got the auto pan on there, just like I had on the stab. And then on the bass percussion, you can see we just have a bit of drum bus. And there we go. That's how I made the bass line. So I definitely recommend trying these types of bass lines. This is actually something done in like a ton of minimal house tracks. Like a lot of the tracks that you guys hear coming out on different labels and tech house as well. What they'll do is maybe they'll do something like this where it's like, you know, maybe they have like a bass line they wrote a while ago and then a loop from a sample pack bass and then, you know, maybe like a cool bass percussion like this. And then what you do is you just go in and figure out what you want your bass line to just be kind of like going straight. Like in this case, it's boom, 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 boom. And then you can just take those different sources and put the different notes in the sequence on those sources. If that makes any sense. Like I said, again, straightforward here, it would have been a boom, 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 boom on one note or on one bass sound. But instead, I took the last note of each time and put it on the bass percussion. And this is a really great way to add depth to your bass line while still keeping it really simple. And it just adds texture to the overall track. And yeah, and then we have the kick. So this is just like a pretty straightforward, sort of fat 909 kick, like you'd hear in a lot of tech house and minimal house. I'm gonna go into a bit of drum bus. So there's without that. And with it, you can hear the kick on its own is already pretty good, but the drum bus just gives it that last push that it really needs to sound proper. And yeah, and then on the group of the lows, all I have is just a bit of saturation. So this is something I do in a lot of videos, but this is really the best way to get your low end to really sound proper in the mix and really get it all tied together. You can see I've also done this with the percussion, and this technique is known as bussing. It's just when you take multiple things that are in the same group, you know, in this case it's everything that's in the low end or like everything that's in the percussion. You know, maybe if you had like 2 or 3 different melodies happening, you could have like a melody bus, stuff like that. And you just put them in a group, and then you just process them together, and it really glues it all together. Here's without this. And then with it. So you can hear what I mean, you know, not only is it making each individual element fatter, but they're becoming fatter together, and you're hearing like the kick and bass interacting in a really nice way. And this is really the secret. A lot of times when people have like pretty well-made tracks that just still don't sound quite right or quite like the pros, a lot of times it's because they're missing this step. So I recommend trying this if you have any project files you're stuck on right now. But yeah, and then after that we have the percussion. So it comes down to basically a few different main layers. So we have this main hi-hat first. You know, just sort of your standard tech house, like hi-hat that will be happening on the upbeats. The main thing with this one that I think really stands out is it's really fat. You know, if you listen to it, it's really full sounding. And that's something like you really gotta make sure of, is like, again, like this is meant to be really simple, not a whole lot of sounds, and so you really just need to make sure that each sound like this is doing the most to really sound big. And in this case, it's really just about finding a good sample. And then I have this ride, which if I play this with the hi-hat, so that's just like, so this just kind of gives you, you know, a little bit of more like, kind of nice high-end stuff happening. Maybe like later on in the track, you could have a part where it does this. But yeah, it's just a nice way to add something extra there inside of the drums that's gonna really like bring it to life. And the other thing is, this is a sound that people hear a lot, but they're not used to hearing it this way. Pretty much every time you hear one of these kinds of rides in a tech house track, it's always either or just it's never just like happening kind of on every other one. Like that. So that's kind of the thought process there, like just doing interesting stuff with sounds that people already know. I've also got this one high passed a bit. Then we have the claps. So as you can hear, we have our main clap, sort of just like this big fat one here. Just because they're going through a bit of drum bass, you can hear how like beefy that clap sample is. That's really what you need to find. And then this one, which is a little bit smaller, but then this is just adding like, you know, those notes. Like a lot of sort of energetic percussion. If I turn this off, we don't have nearly as much energy in the track. See, I've heard that in a lot of these style of tracks, and it really adds like an interesting thing. Now, something you also got to keep in mind is like making everything fit together. So if you notice, it's playing off of what the piano is doing. That's how I wrote this, actually, was by listening to the piano, because you want everything to be kind of working together. You know, you don't want it to have like this random clap that's in the background just going doing a bunch of extra stuff. You want it to be playing off of what's already happening. You know, this goes back to making a really simple track. It's more about exploring like what you can do inside of very simple elements like this, like having them play off of each other and create excitement there, rather than just having a bunch of elements and adding another one to try to make your track more interesting. You know, that's not usually going to work. So yeah, that's what this clap is doing. Then we just have this like extra little percussion stuff down here, this bell, and then the second hi-hat, which I'll play this with the main hi-hat so you can hear. It just goes, and then that bell just coming in there. So yeah, just like some simple little stuff, but this really adds a lot of depth because it's subtle. But this is the type of stuff that you hear when you're like listening through sample pack drum loops and you wonder like why they sound so animated and alive. It's because they're doing this kind of stuff, you know, little subtle percussion that just comes in like once every bar or maybe 2 times every bar, and it's playing off of what the main percussion is doing. It's gonna do a lot for the track. And yeah, and then on the group of percussion, we just have a bit of drum bass, and then actually I'm not even using this EQ, but yeah, so just a little bit of drum bass to kind of glue it all together. Here's without this. And then with it. So yeah, you know, just fattening everything up, making it all really tight and glued together. And another question that I've been getting asked recently is, why don't you put the kick inside with the percussion bus? Because technically, you know, the kick is a percussion element, and that's actually a good question that I wanted to answer, because it's something I wondered a lot at first as well. And a lot of times when people send me project files, I'll notice like they have the kick inside of the percussion bus, and it just, there's a reason why you don't want to do that. And the reason for that is all of these sounds, you know, these sounds all fit into the same world. They're all mid-range and high-end percussion. They're all things that are adding, like, one particular goal to the mix, essentially. The kick, on the other hand, is really not, even though it is percussion, it's not really even doing that same stuff. You know, it's not accomplishing the same goal in the mix. It's a lot closer to what the bass line is doing in the mix than the percussion. And if I start to put this in the percussion group, you'll notice that, like, See, everything just kind of has this weird crunch to it because of the low end coming through there. So that is why you don't want to put the kick in the percussion group, is because the only way you're really going to be able to like truly make your percussion as fat as possible is by hitting it really hard with some saturation. And there's like, you can only do so much saturation on the kick, but you can do a lot more saturation on the percussion. And what's going to happen then is your kick is going to be too saturated and your percussion is going to be getting ducked out of the way, even if it is fat enough. So that's why I like to just stick with the kick in the bass group, because, you know, it's really a lot closer to that, even though it is technically a percussion. That's why I think it's better to just have a group that is either just hi-hats or just percussion or like something like that. And yeah, so this is probably one of my favorite project files from these videos that I made. But yeah, so that is me for this one, guys. I hope you enjoyed. As always, make sure to like this video as well as subscribe. And let me know what you think of this video in the comments. Like I said in the beginning, you can get the full project files, samples, MIDI, presets. All of that from this video is available right at the top of the description on my Bandcamp. So you can take this and tear it apart and maybe even build your own tracks with it. It's all available there. It's a great way to support me. Thank you so much, everybody. And I will see you tomorrow with another video.